Good morning.
Hello.
How's everyone
Morning,
doing?
guys. It's Friday, so I guess that's good. Although, like you guys, I'm sure I could use an extra day this week based on how everything's going. So good and bad.
I feel that. It's at one point I had 4 meetings that were all scheduled at the same time, and I was jumping back and forth. So yeah, it's been a wild week. How about you, Josh?
Yeah, it's been a fun week. Full of yesterday. I literally had nonstop meetings from 9:30 until about 5:30 my team. So that was a fun day. Didn't leave the chair. Thankfully, my wife came home for lunch and was like, "Hey, I bought these microwave meals. Can you please microwave them and bring them down to me?" So that was fantastic. And I do got to share the crazy happenstance of a story that happened Tuesday. So every year, our city's Chamber of Commerce puts on a local cybersecurity conference, and it's much smaller. I mean, you're talking a couple hundred people, but it's really for local businesses in the area. And as part of the Connect Secure speaking program I'm in, I was meant to meet somebody from ConnectWise that Matt hooked me up with and said, "Hey, you need to meet with this person," and was looking to get it scheduled. And then I'm looking at the agenda for this conference, and I'm like, that name is the same. So I like messaged Matt on the side. I'm like, pretty sure that this is the person. And it turns out it was. So I don't, what are the odds? It was that person's first ever time in South Dakota. And we both happened to be at the same time in the same place and got to meet in person. So it's been a fun week, lots of
Awesome.
things like that happen.
Yeah, this is a good coincidence. You can name her. It's Natalie Suarez. She's
Yeah,
all
yeah,
over.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Everyone knows her.
Natalie was awesome. It was really cool to meet her.
I had a bunch of fun. So work hard, play hard. I got to do an event for Threat Locker yesterday at a racetrack, and got to take a Ferrari 488 out on the track unrestricted for a while. So that was my fun that I got to work in this week.
That's awesome.
And you made it back here after that. That
Without
would be my
owing anyone
danger.
extra money. Yes.
How did you
That's
feel
awesome.
the first time you had to drive your daily driver car after that?
Oh yeah. No, that's there's probably a ticket in my future. Oh, all right.
Well, we didn't cover sports yet. The Avalanche are tied 3-3 with the Dallas Stars. Hopefully they pull that out in Game 7. The NBA playoffs are going all right. I don't think anyone's beaten the Cavaliers. They look super strong. Bucks are out. Timberwolves moved on, so cool there. And then baseball it's baseball. All of our teams are doing good.
Cubs. Oh, did you see the Cubs Pirates game with the fan that fell earlier this week? I was
Yes, I did see
following up
that.
on that, and the fan is still in the hospital, but sounds like maybe at a better, more stable level now. So thank goodness for that. But yeah,
Yeah,
crazy.
that was scary. Honestly, surprised it doesn't happen more often. So many stadiums have mezzanine and upper deck levels, so you can just fall right over the railing.
Mm-hmm.
Like intoxicated or not, any of us could do it.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
No, that's I would be the one to do that, make that foolish mistake.
Hopefully not. Definitely hope for the best for him, and hope that doesn't happen anymore, because it was pretty scary. So
I'll give a positive baseball news before we move on. Soto finally hit his Citi Field home runs with a 2-home-run game, and they lost, but it's okay. He's a guy with it's amazing. A guy with a 120 OPS plus is considered to be having a disastrous year so far.
Yeah, expectations are very high.
Yep. All right. Well, shall we get into our first story?
Yeah,
probably.
All right. Has anyone figured out a solid way to triage incoming tickets without overwhelming the text? Lately, it feels like every ticket that comes in is marked urgent, even the ones that definitely aren't. Our texts are getting crushed trying to keep up because there's no good way to filter what's actually critical versus what can wait. Does anyone have a system, tool, or workflow that's actually helped prioritize better without needing a full-time dispatcher is the caveat?
I mean, I don't know about you guys. For us, that was the answer. We needed a dispatcher who was not necessarily deep technical, but someone who like had some technical background and was looking for a just lesser stressful job towards the tail end of his career. And he knew enough to be able to like have a clue what was going on and be able to relatively prioritize things, and did other things around the office, right? Didn't sit there doing tickets all day. Um, but I got to be honest, we tried so many other things like, having techs do it when they came in, or having like automated filters and all that and the only thing that ever worked for us was a human actually looking at it, and more importantly, a human who had enough technical knowledge to make that distinction. I'm curious if you guys found anything that works. We just didn't.
I can tell you that I think in this scenario where they don't have the ability to have a full-time dispatcher yet, the answer is probably to have a workflow in place where it goes to a triage board first, and then have their existing team take turns wearing the dispatcher hat, so that the ticket gets cleaned up before any of the other techs see it. So they can at least correct the urgent versus not urgent scenarios. But yes, we've certainly run into clients that everything is a emergency.
If everything is urgent, then nothing is urgent. Right. From a technical aspect, you could look at some sort of tagging system depending on your CMDB, how that's set up. But if tickets are assigned to certain servers or devices, or people who are VPs or POCs, something that is critical, then it would system kind of automatically tag that as well. But someone trying to get around and just saying it's urgent, I think it goes to having conversations with the client as well of again, hey, this is the SLAs, it's best effort, and if you try to subject, if everything's urgent, then nothing is, right? Like just having those kind of honest conversations with them is based off of this ticket. You assign it the P1, P2, P3, P4, whatever it is, and just saying it's urgent doesn't automatically skip the line.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, I think there's absolutely some client education that needs to happen here. But I guess I've also seen instances where technicians rush to treat everything as urgent as well, because we want to ease the troubles and pains that people feel. And so I think that's a little double-sided there too, probably making sure that the team understands that they do have the appropriate time, things are reviewed, and that they're following their workflows properly, regardless of what the urgency status is marked as.
Yep,
that's a good point.
Okay.
We sometimes had that issue with dispatchers, or even when techs were changing the statuses themselves, having to differentiate between urgency and impact, right? Like a can't print could be a pretty impactful urgency thing if it's can't print the form you need to complete payroll or something like that. And so it's when you do start doing that, I would recommend just instilling or reminding that just because it's not your virtualization cluster blowing up, that doesn't mean it's not urgent in the mind of the client, right? Our definition is not necessarily the same as the client's definition. So we found that techs would sometimes dismiss things that were truly urgent from a customer service perspective because they weren't technically highly impactful. They could be impactful to biz ops, even if they're not impactful to system uptime.
Yep. I was going to just go on to our favorite word here, our favorite acronym when it comes to business processes, the good old ITIL, right? And you guys nailed it with the business impact and the technical urgency. Those are what needs to be balanced. So the client can dictate the business impact, but we as MSP are more than likely, since we've taken over the technical, deciding on the technical urgency. So combining those two together, you are going to get the P1, P2, P3, P4. And once you have that in place, then you can kind kind of start making rules around what would qualify as more of that, and building the culture, training your internal and your clients to follow that as well.
Sounds good. Well, I think we've solved the entirety of the triage process for every MSP that is out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into our first news story this week. All right. More than 21 million employee screenshots leaked from Work Composer workplace surveillance apps. Chat logs, emails, passwords, and more were all left wide open on the web. So Work Composer, an American company operating out of Delaware, is an employee productivity monitoring tool that gets installed on every PC. Monitors what applications are used, how long, which websites, etc., what they're typing. It takes screenshots every 20 seconds for management to review, and they left a S3 bucket open that contained 21 million of these unredacted screenshots. This bucket was totally open to the internet for anyone to browse. It's difficult to estimate exactly how many companies are impacted, but we know that 21 million screenshots came from over 200,000 unique users and employees. So this is a pretty big leak. Yeah. What are his thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, it's no different than any other information or sensitive info that you might be sending to a third party. I'm going to almost intentionally sidestep what comes up a lot with these, with the, you shouldn't be doing this in the first place argument. As far as I'm concerned, we're not the morality police, and if clients want to do that, that's their decision to make. We can support it. As far as the risk profile on this, yeah, you have sensitive information, and the thing to be careful of if you have clients that decide to go down this road is just to do the same type of third-party vendor analysis that you do for anything else, right? You might have sensitive PHI on the screen, or sensitive financial info, or sensitive CUI if you're a DoD or DIB contractor, right? There could be anything seeing. So just take into account what kind of information might be going to this, just like you would take into account if you were storing files in a cloud service provider, or if you were using an email service or any other SaaS application. This is pretty impactful, and if they were regulated industries, they could have some serious reporting issues coming on from this leak.
Yeah, it makes me think of the whole Microsoft Rewind feature rollout of like the same type of liability in issues there. Granted, there are allegedly ways around that, and this is also an elective service that people are on the Work Composer side of things. But yeah, I think the other aspects of this is understanding where your data is and how much data you're sharing with each one of those third parties, and trying to minimize that wherever possible. So,
Yep.
I know regardless of whether it's a corporate device, there's a lot of data leakage that happens out there to a point where I think that investing in things to both track, obviously, the dark web, but also data broker removal services and things of that nature are becoming more and more important for the average end user.
Not only that, I'd want to tack one more thing on, since this was shared in the MSP subreddit. Again, like Matt, I'm not going to get into if this is something that we should or shouldn't be offering, but making sure that you have the right service provider contracts in place and the right insurance to protect against these things. Because if this is something that you were selling and the vendor, made this, like, are you the MSP responsible now because this is something that you provided as the service, and a service you provided is now caused data leakage? So please make sure that you are getting legal review of your MSAs and your contracts, and reviewing things with your cyber insurance to make sure something like this would be covered under like an E&O, for example. Any of these stories, even if you weren't impacted, this is a great time to say, hey, we weren't impacted this time. Great. Let's make sure we're not going to be impacted when the next one happens.
I think too, this also makes it a harder sale for this organization and ones like it that offer similar services in the future, because that surveillance already kind of sows some distrust and strains morale, in my opinion. But I think the fact that there is such a large public leak like this, that really compounds distrust from employees about what could or could not be shared out there.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, we're not the only people who see news stories like this, and you likely have some backlash to begin with when you start telling employees. Or I know some have some kind of hidden install features, but they'll find out. And as soon as your employees start realizing they're being surveilled, forgetting about the "we don't like this, don't you trust us" approach, it's very easy to point to this and say this stuff can get out, like for even more ammo against it. So I agree, it's a potential issue with this. Could happen to any SaaS application though, this or otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely. All right, well, let's go on to the next one here. Matt, you want to take this one, or are you rocking your laptop?
I'm pretty much always rocking my laptop this day based on where my camera is.
Sounds good. I can summarize this here since it's a pretty long post, but we've seen this time and time again. But this is another one of these where burnt out, losing hope. This person's been working at the same MSP for nearly 12 years. They initially enjoyed the work, and they do enjoy the company. They have a great relationship with their manager, but there's a significant shift in what he needs to do because they tried growing from a break fix to an MSP model, but they don't have adequate staffing. They hired 2 other techs. One was pretty ineffective, and the other one was focusing on sales. So it leaves him at the point where he has to do everything, constant help desk duties. This has led to being burnt out, resentment towards every time a client calls in and submits a ticket, rushed fixes, so doing a quick fix rather than the right thing, and the ability to focus on meaningful projects, compounded by the feeling of everyone relies on him, so he can't let anyone down. So they feel like a failure. They're having some health issues due to stress, and they're just wanting to know what they should do.
Well, I think that this is a very common issue in the space. It thankfully is starting to be talked about more and more, both the mental and physical wellness aspect of things. But yeah, I think it's a struggle that everyone goes through in this space, just because usually by the nature of what we do, people are not in the best place in their lives at the moment when they're calling in asking for help. So I think that inherently creates stress in everything that we're responding to and trying to do. And of course, we're, shrinking budgets and commoditization and trying to rationalize the decisions that are being made. And there's a lot of things at play there. So I think for me, addressing this was making sure to time block time for myself, just to have some time to recoup and kind of reflect and recharge. So I have some time built in weekly, but there's also periodic time where I need those mental health days and get out of here and go do something else. How about you guys?
I want to talk about the company as a whole. Is reading that I saw they've been at this 12 years and we're talking about 1,000 endpoints. To me, that's pretty slow growth. Now, that they could be just referring to their managed services, like they're converting from break fix to managed services. But when I saw that, I went to, if you're familiar with the model that some organizations call entrepreneurial journey, they are very much operating in what we call the muscle and feel phase. To me, this sounds like an organization that doesn't really have their processes dialed in. Things are just happening via sheer willpower of the individuals, and it's really not systemized yet. There aren't flows and documented procedures for things. And when a ticket comes in, this is what happens when they go in the queue and the order that they're prioritized in, or any of that stuff. And I think that root cause is leading to that burnout and frustration, right? The muscle and feel approach really does rely on the sheer willpower of individuals, and you can only operate that way for so long before you start to burn out. So in addition to agreeing with what Henry said from the self-care and mental aspects of IT, I think this organization as a whole would really benefit from spending some time internally and trying to scale up in a more approachable and structured way.
I think this goes to communication too. Is his manager even aware of this? I mean, they have a relationship for the last 12 years. If you're not telling him this, I mean, really everything you put in this post, you should be telling your manager and, you know, having a conversation with him. But not only that too, this is something that I just heard recently, and I'm going to give credit to our friend Dean because it sounds like it's something he would said, but I apologize if he didn't. But you have to stop putting on the Superman cape at some point. Setting the boundaries, which can be a little tricky, but if you save the day all the time, again, your manager might not realize that they need to focus and fix the issues that are causing you to put on that cape because they aren't there. You're shielding the manager from the view because you don't let them see that, right? And not only that, why would other people, if they're just, you know, hey, you're going to save the day, like I'm not going to do X, Y, and Z. I'm not going to learn because Superman's just going to swoop in and save it or stop it. So we're not going to do anything differently because we don't have to. So again, setting those firm boundaries of I need to make sure that I'm not being burnt out and I can't do this and I need help, and communicating that. And as much as it is nice to swoop in and save the day, if we continually doing it every day, we're actually causing more harm than good because one person can't do it all.
I think that's a great point, is in probably the discussion that needs to happen between this person and their manager or the owner, is that having healthy engineers lowers the risk for that MSP, for those clients. Like if you're pushing yourself constantly to that extreme, like you're going to make errors, and you're going to increase the likelihood of risk and issues. So I think, to your point, having candid discussions with the manager or owner, I think is a good place to start here. I was just kind of looking to, there's a stat here of 74% of employees think it's appropriate to talk about mental health at work, but only 58% feel comfortable doing so. Kind of gets to that divide of like, just aren't over that hump yet of, communicating the way they should be.
Absolutely. All right. Well, speaking about mental health, it really goes into the next story. And this is one that is a little more than a week old, but it hits really close to home. Something we need to talk about. How do you get over the guilt of a breach? In the past year, my company was victim to a severe cybersecurity breach. They almost got everything. Well, there's a ton of factors in play, like leadership shutting us down every step of the way in an attempt to move fast, lack of headcount, etc. I can't stop beating myself over the fact that I hold a piece of blame as the cybersecurity engineer. Whether it's a missed alert or simply not putting two and two together at the time, it's severely impacted my mental health since it's happened and makes me wonder if I'm not cut out to be a cyber engineer. I know a lot of work environments are blameless and other engineers seem to be able to compartmentalize it, but I can't. I'm not the only one who's gone through this. Does anyone who has experienced something have any guidance for someone relatively new in the field?
I think for me, the guidance would be, yeah, it's easy to say compartmentalize, but do a real self-evaluation on this and differentiate between, did I miss an alert that I should have seen? Like, was this an error? And those happen, right? Nobody is perfect. Or was it simply we didn't have the systems in place, we didn't have the budget to purchase what was recommended, we didn't have the headcount to deal with the volume of alerts, right? And if you can learn something from something, like if you made a decision that impacted and ultimately influenced, I won't say caused, one single person's decision is not to blame for really any breach, but if there's something you can learn that maybe you would do differently next time, try and take that away. But also be realistic about the resources that you have. You know, if this was caused by lack of proper resources, whether it's software, outside services, headcount, what have you, acknowledge that part too. You know, unless you're the owner of the company, you're not ultimately responsible for the success of this, and you're doing what you can. Take away something. You know, don't also say, hey, it's not my fault at all. If you could do something differently, learn that too. But be realistic about the amount of impact you were able to have based on the resources given, would be my one sentence advice.
I think that really hammers home on the unrealistic idea of perfection that we have around some of the security. Is like, people are inherently flawed, and if your security posture is relying on people being perfect, you're going to have failures, and it's just going to happen. There's things that are outside of your control, so focus on the things that you can control, have that defense in depth, and understand that risk and blame are not equal. That how do I say this? There are enough decisions that go into setting a organization's security posture that it truly should not come down to one individual's skill or lack of skill.
This is one of the things, and one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about it is these are the things about security incidences and ransomware and breaches that aren't talked about enough. This is why I'm very passionate about what we're doing over at IR Games, is having these conversations, because they suck. Your guys' advice was great, but that doesn't, like, it happens, and there's not really anything you can do about it except for, like you said, learn from it and try to get through it. But it is going to suck. It's going to suck for a while. Every alert that comes in is going to make you jump. Even myself, after an event that I had to work through, I had a dream that my Google and my personal accounts were then compromised because I couldn't stop this one. Why now it's like compounding, and it affected me for a good solid 2 weeks. And it sucks. I mean, there was one story that I always tell in our IR games about an email compromise that I had to work with a client who, when I was calling to get them access back into her account, she broke down on the phone and was crying. I was like, I'm so sorry. I caused all of this. This is all my fault. Like, all of this problems. And it just basically had to assure her, like, hey, this isn't on you. Yes, you may have clicked the link, but there are other things in place that we need to do to make sure that this doesn't happen again, and other security controls. And again, if you clicking the link is the house of cards that makes the business topple, it really isn't technically on you at that point. That's just the straw that broke it, but it was going to topple at some point. It just unfortunately happened. But there's no other thing other than, like, yes, this is going to happen, and having those open conversations about, you're not alone. This happens to other people, or even just state, like, yes, this is going to happen. This can happen to you. You will be jumpy. You just have to give it time. There's nothing really else you can try to, again, talk, like to Henry's point in the last story, talk about your mental health, bring these things up, take some time away from work, whatever you're able to do. But there's really no other thing other than learn from it, and it's going to take time, but it's going to be there. And depending on the severity of it, it might haunt you longer than a couple of weeks. These things suck, and this is why I'm so adamant about rising the tides and needing to prevent these things, because it's so much more than the technical aspect of fighting the hackers or getting insurance involved or stopping. There are so many emotions and human impacts that are involved with these breaches that I want more and more companies to understand why it's so important to take these controls seriously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it does become hard to separate system errors from internalizing or personalizing an issue. But like in a lot of these instances, this is a system failure, not an individual failure. Even if they clicked the link or downloaded the file, like that still falls back on the system was not properly configured with that defense in depth in mind. So,
Yep.
at least
I
in my
mean,
opinion.
again,
Yeah.
you can still do everything right and still fail. If we go to the car analogy, you could park in a garage, you could lock your car, you could do everything, and someone can still break in. At that point, like, you did everything you could, and you might have mental anguish over the next couple, whatever, because you were violated. Absolutely an acceptable, spot, but you tried mitigating the risk, and 0 days happen. They're going to happen. It's going to happen. And it's just, what really separates us apart is not, being breached, but how you recover and learn from a breach to prevent it from happening in the future. So, you have valuable experience, for better or for worse. And if needed, therapy is also an option. Don't be afraid to reach out and be open about it, and get help if it is that bad.
All right, let's hop into our next story here. So, taking over project management. I've been with my MSP for 4 years, and Monday am taking over our non-reoccurring revenue projects team. The previous PM was let go last week, so there's no one to show me what they've been doing. We have a backlog of project work, quotes to send, and discovery to do. I will take anything you have and are willing to share it as it
Yikes.
pertains to project management. Thanks in advance.
Man, I could talk about this for the next 4 days because that was one of my primary roles for a long time. I'll say this, though, before I take over the whole conversation accidentally. If you're just stepping into this, take some time and get the lay of the land first. Like, it's going to be very tempting to just come in and change everything and implement new systems and processes and all that. Um, Talk to the people working the projects now, doing the quotes, like what the process is, how things work, and really take a solid couple of weeks and just figure out what your organization is doing now, and spend some time thinking about how to improve things instead of just walking in and chucking a grenade into the entire process. Um, which is tempting and what I want to do and manage to resist it. I would highly recommend fighting the urge to go in and starting from zero. There's very likely some quality processes there, and edge cases are there for a reason. Most likely, just figure out what's going on first.
Yep. So I know this person posted in here, but they also posted in a handful of other MSP Discords. So I feel for them. They definitely were feeling the stress. But the direct advice that I did give this person on the Discord is, if you have access, so if they were let go, hopefully you still have access to an account. Reset the password, make sure they can't get into it. But I would ask for access to the old PM's account, so you can see, like, this is how they sent out whatever the templatized, whatever you can get on, because that should be company property. So you at least get a lay of the land. So you're not just starting from absolute zero. You're able to see some sort of template or kind of how they worked, and things like that. And then to Matt's point too, work with the rest of the team that are doing these. If you're doing the project management, hopefully you are also not doing the project. So working with the team on how these things are done and learning the lay of the land and getting, okay, this is how they were done. And then collaborating with the team over, hey, what worked, what doesn't, what things can we improve on? And coming from that new perspective on, maybe there is a new way to do things. The tool isn't going to fix it. You have to come up with how you're going to do things, the process that you're doing, and then finding a tool that matches how you want to do that process.
Yeah. I would probably ask for a halt on new projects for at least a week, and do like as you guys mentioned, doing a fact finding for at least 2 days of just like, where are we at on these statements of work, and schedules and so forth. And then probably be meeting not just with the internal team, but with the client side as well, so you truly understand what their expectations are around their schedules, because you might find that some are a little bit looser as far as, you know, they may be able to adjust to help compensate. But yeah, I think then kind of resetting around what is attainable with the projects that are out there before you start accepting in any new ones then.
I mean, there's a lot that's going to
go. What's that?
Go ahead, Josh.
So there's a lot that's going to go into it. It's not just managing the product, the projects. Are you also scoping, quoting? Where are you at with current projects as far as getting those done? Are they being invoiced? At what point do you invoice it? Like, there's so much other than actually managing the project that you'll have to pick up.
I think overall what we're saying is that this person has two distinct issues: taking over an existing department and defining your organization's professional services process. And he's got to get through the first part of that before you get into the definition part. Just keep the wheels in motion, you know, get the stuff that's in progress to completion, and then start defining what your process should be. And to me, that's a whole different discussion than I just took over this department. What do I do? Well, the main thing to do is keep things from falling apart while you start to think about what the real process should be.
Just thinking of the cartoon sailboat that's, you know, got holes in all the hole that you're trying to finger plug.
Yep. All right. Well, let's go to the next one here. This one is we don't have this issue anymore. It's 2025, right? Have you guys figured out a solid way to handle vague tickets like internet's down, email issue, my computer's slow, no context? Unlike our first story, there's no urgency level, nothing. Just instead of vibe coding, they're vibe submitting tickets. You know, something that you guys still plagues you. How do you fix this?
You almost don't fix it, right? Like if you go to the doctor and say my stomach hurts, half the time you're talking about like your intestine or like the muscle behind something or something like that, right? It's almost naive of us to think and expect end users to put in like super descriptive tickets that point directly to the system with the issue. So I think the way you fix it is to remember that these are not experts in the field. And if you get a lot of detail on a ticket, then so much the better for us from a diagnosis perspective. But I always make that comparison to if I go to the mechanic and say my engine's making a funny noise, turns out it's like a loose hubcap or something, right? Like you have to remember these aren't computer experts the same way I'm not a car expert or a physician.
Yeah, to that end, when there's a reason that EMTs, or when you go to the ER, like the first thing is they triage. And so this really gets back to our own triage processes and how that's handled. Because clients aren't experts, and especially if they're self-submitting these tickets, there's certainly going to be these vague things that pop up consistently. The one thing I would say is if you do have the ability to give them access to submit tickets through a portal, is giving them more defined options for them to choose from may help you gather more information up front.
Henry, I have a question for you. What does MSP stand for?
Depends who you talk to.
How many S's are in this question?
Yeah,
this is true.
So the whole generic, managed services provider, but
exactly. You are a services provider. Pick up the damn phone. It's your job. Reach out to the client and get access to it. Like that's, I mean, it really goes, again, going back to like my restaurant days, you'd have people like, oh, I don't like the food. Okay, cool. Like, I'm sorry to hear that. What's wrong? You know, is it cold? Was it like not cooked right? Like what can I do to, again, identify the problem, and then work on fixing the issue. You have to go out and you have to ask questions. You have to provide a service. I mean, it's that it's just what you have to do. And unfortunately, there's in the restaurant and the IT world people who don't realize that, like, oh, they should just tell me exactly what it is so I can fix it, or like, I don't want to talk to them. I'm like, well, then you're not in the service provider industry. I'm sorry. Like, you need to find something else to do.
No, in every iteration of whatever we've been called, whether that's the trusted advisor or what have you, as we've evolved as an industry, that always remains true. Is that the underlying is that we're there to help solve whatever that problem is and identifying the root cause of that problem.
And again, it also goes back to client education. So when you're reaching out to them, because it does happen, right? The ticket comes in and you're like, this is pointless. I can't work with this. So now you're going to reach out for more information. The end user doesn't answer the phone, and now you leave a message, and and that the user doesn't call back, they never respond. And then like you close it saying, hey, no response. And then they open it the next day saying, what the heck? I'm still having this issue. Again, going back to the restaurant, hey, my food wasn't that great. Like, hey, sorry, what didn't you like about it? Oh, it was too spicy, it was too hot, etc. Like, hey, sorry, we'll remake it. And then next time, when you order, let's go ahead and say, hey, I want mild instead of medium or something. Like, again, train the client, the user, on providing more detailed description of what they want so they can get the outcome better next time.
Yeah, that's a good point. You can definitely train end users and everyone involved to try and give you better descriptions. I think the issue for me comes up when we start expecting it, right? Like, it's great when you get it, but the expectation is you get a report of whatever is causing them to not be able to do their job at the time, and it's our job to sort through that. Like, their job isn't to make it easy for us to fix their problem. It's to tell us what IT thing is preventing them from doing whatever, because they don't care about IT. They care about being able to process their payment or whatever their job is. And that's all they know, is something on the screen or is preventing them from doing that.
The whole business outcomes versus tools discussion. Yeah.
Yep. I'm again just making the parallel, since I've done it throughout this story. Again, the client, or your customer at a restaurant, you don't care how it's cooked. You're just hungry and you want it the way you want it, right? So again, training and providing how you want that output and working together with the wait staff, the cook, whoever, to get you that expected outcome is how it's done. And we just have to train up on it. So perfect. All right, we got one more story here, and again, I try to find something weird.
Lightning round.
This was fun here. So, do you have I was slightly too good at my job and management felt it was really awkward story. So this person will start. This is about 20 years ago at the start of the career. He worked in a tech support call center. If too many people in one particular country were out sick, it was common to let overflow calls go to an adjacent country that spoke the same language. Well, someone up top decided, all the Scandinavian countries speak good enough English, have them handle the overflow on the UK line. And dear Lord, did that bite them. It took all of 2 days before they disconnected my department because too many people called back, getting incredibly frustrated by the lack of service and demanding to ask that nice Norwegian chap they spoke to previously. So is this something, I mean, I have one quick story, which is pretty funny. Back in my call center days, is we had a Spanish speaking line and an English speaking line. And every now and then they'd push the wrong thing and get to us. And, they would start speaking in Spanish. And, I would say, no hablo español, uno momento, por favor, and then transfer them. And I had one guy call me out. He's like, that was pretty damn good Spanish. Are you sure you don't speak it? And I was like, that's all I got. That's where it ends. Right? So, any of you have had like, hey, being too good actually was a bad thing in your careers?
Not directly. I think if I'm going to connect this to the relevancy to MSPs, is that I have seen happen when you escalate something and suddenly the client wants to talk to tier 3 all the time. That's the one issue I see with this. So my advice or story here is, Just be careful when you're doing that. Like ensure that when you're escalating, make sure the client knows that they're going up to a different tier or level of support, and that it's not a free pass to skip the line. I don't know about you guys. I did have that issue a little, like from when we first started, and it was a tiny company. And after a while, I really wasn't doing very much direct client support anymore, but clients from the early days still had my cell phone number and would text and call and all. Because right, yes, don't give text your cell phone number. Guess what? Day one of the company, they all had my cell phone number.
Yep.
So just be careful of that portion of it. Maybe I'm too humble. I don't know that I would ever say I was too good at my job or anything like that, but be careful with escalations. They'll get used to the higher techs.
I want to hop in real quick before Henry, because that does remind me, and again, not to toot my own horn, but I did do things differently. So my first MSP, when I would go out and do the service calls, instead of just doing the tech, I would try to build a relationship and talk with the client and kind of get to know them and know about them. So I kind of had that rapport. Well, to Matt's point too, like the skipping the line. Well, the problem with that is the client then only wanted me to deal with the issues. So when they would call in and someone else would try to work on them and they wouldn't know the network as good as I did, or no, they're like, just why don't you just have Josh come out? Why don't you just have him, like, can we just talk to Josh and have him look at it because he can fix this. And it felt good because it's like, cool, like I'm really well liked from the clients, but now looking back from a business owner perspective, it's not good to have that. I was actually causing more issues because I'm creating a bottleneck and service that can't be, repeated. And to me, it seemed like a good thing, but there is some operational failure that comes with that.
Yeah, that's I can be a little over empathetic at times to some of the clients that we've had, and so I would say not necessarily that I was particularly good at my job or overly good, but it lended to itself to creating issues because we had a client then that they went down this rabbit hole of believing that the FBI and CIA and NSA and everyone was out to get them, and then the aliens were after them, and so forth. And by not drawing clearer boundaries, that led to some very awkward interactions with them before we were able to kind of like cease some of that service. So. Yeah, I've got a whole bunch of weird client stories over the years I can share, but I don't know that any of them particularly are related to knowledge or skill as much as like I probably gave more rope than I should have.
Hey,
that's a good point. Like, it's so tempting for us, as like higher level people in our organizations to cut corners and allow things and allow clients to get away with stuff that's technically against policy, and they get used to that.
Yep. Well, that does cover the story. So if we want to hear Henry's stories, if we want to, have a drink with him and listen to some of these stories that he has over the years, where might we find you, Henry, in the next couple weeks?
So I will be at MSP GeekCon here, Sunday through Wednesday, I believe, down in Orlando. So hopefully catch you there. And then I will be heading to London for the MSP show out at the Excel there. Then joining you, fine gentlemen, at IT Nation Secure. Looking forward to hearing both of you speak. Then I will be back in London for London Tech Week. And you guys Josh, are you doing PAX 8 Beyond?
Yep, I will also be at PAX 8 Beyond.
Awesome. And then, as always, head on over to IR Games for every month, new scenario.
Yeah. Matt, you got anything you want to add?
Well, I'll be at GeekCon at least for Tuesday. I have IT Nation Evolve right before that, so I can only make one day of GeekCon, but I'll be talking about something we talked about during this show, which is mental health in IT and burnout and things like that. Obviously, I'll be at IT Nation Secure doing multiple things. And for Secure, we currently have a flash sale going on through this week. So tickets are half price until May 9th. And other than that, I just hope to see everyone there, and looking forward to seeing you at GeekCon as well.
Should be a good time. All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, and I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend.
You as well.
You
Have a
too.
great
Thanks,
one.
guys.
See you next week.
Yep.
This has been a broadcast of the MSP Media Network.